Imagine standing in front of like 90,000 screaming people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right in Las Vegas.
Okay.
The main stage at EDC. The beat is building up. The crowd is just at this utter fever pitch. Lasers are tearing through the night sky. And you reach over to the mixer and just turn the music off.
Just completely kill the audio.
Total staggering silence. And that is the exact super high-stakes gamble that this 19-year-old kid from France took to force a multi-billion-dollar record label to just, well, pay attention to him.
I mean, it is the ultimate display of leverage, taking the executive out of the boardroom and just forcing them to confront the undeniable reality of the crowd.
Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are looking at the life of an elite Grammy-winning artist. But I want to set the parameters right off the bat here. We're not doing this for celebrity gossip.
Right. No backstage glamour stories today.
Exactly. We are extracting a highly specific blueprint for sustained success, creative resilience, and, honestly, peak physical performance.
Yeah, and the source material we are pulling from today is really fascinating. It's an extensive transcript from the Ultimate Human podcast. It's an interview conducted by human biologist Gary Brecka with his close friend, the Grammy-winning DJ and producer, Cedric Gervais.
And the juxtaposition there is just what makes this so compelling to me. You have a human biologist whose entire life's work revolves around anti-aging, cellular optimization, longevity.
And he is interviewing a guy who spent decades in an industry historically notorious for the exact opposite of that.
Literally the opposite. Nightlife, sleep deprivation, environmental toxicity, you name it.
It's a total collision of two worlds.
Yeah.
And the underlying mission of our analysis today is to really deconstruct Cedric's evolution.
Yeah.
We're tracing his steps from a teenager mixing vinyl in a grimy analog basement in France to a global superstar who actually lost his psychological compass in the blinding lights of unprecedented success.
But then he found it again and ultimately completely biohacked his grueling lifestyle to feel 20 years old at the age of 44.
Which is wild.
It's insane. So we want to equip you with actionable insights today. We are exploring the hidden mechanics of mastering a craft, the neurological dangers of what we'll call the success trap, and how to radically optimize your physiological health when your daily environment is just pure, unadulterated chaos.
So let's start at the origin point, because the scarcity of Cedric's early environment dictates pretty much everything that follows.
Right. The story begins in Marseille, down in the south of France during the 1990s.
And that era is critical context. The friction of the analog world just cannot be overstated here.
Totally. So Cedric is 15 years old. He goes to a show and he sees Daft Punk and Carl Cox performing live. And it is a lightning strike to his psyche.
Oh, I'm sure. Seeing Daft Punk in the 90s.
Right. He goes home, just completely rewired, and decides right then and there he's going to become a DJ. So he acquires a set of Technics turntables and a mixer, sets them all up in his grandmother's basement, and he begins practicing for 6 hours a day, every single day after school.
But I think it's important to note that the practice itself was only half the battle. Think about the logistics of music discovery in that specific window of time.
Oh yeah, you couldn't just open a streaming app and hit a discovery playlist.
Exactly.
If Cedric wanted to hear new music, he had to use a physical landline to call his friends at their houses, arrange a specific time to meet at a brick-and-mortar record store, and then they would spend hours literally interrogating the clerks.
Just asking what new vinyl shipments had arrived.
Yeah, and buying the physical records with whatever cash they had, taking them back to the grandmother's basement, and manually aligning the grooves to mix the tracks.
And what we are looking at here is a psychological concept known as desirable difficulty.
Hold on, let me challenge that premise for a second. Because if I am an aspiring creator today, I can download a digital audio workstation, a library of 10 million high-fidelity sounds, and literally every song ever recorded in human history in about 3 minutes.
Sure, the access is unprecedented.
Right, so from a purely developmental standpoint, doesn't having infinite access and flawless digital tools give a modern creator a staggering advantage over Cedric's grueling all-day hunt for a single piece of plastic? I mean, surely having Pro Tools today produces better audio quality than a basement setup in 1995.
Well, on the surface, yes, frictionless access appears to be a monumental advantage. You have the tools immediately. But friction actually serves a vital neurological purpose in skill acquisition.
How so?
So desirable difficulty posits that introducing challenges during the learning process actually deepens the cognitive encoding of that information. The immense physical and financial effort Cedric had to expend forced a profound intrinsic commitment to the craft.
Oh, I see. Because the acquisition cost was so high, the perceived value of the record was exponentially greater.
Precisely. When you spend your entire Saturday and your limited allowance just to acquire 3 new songs, you are going to listen to those specific tracks 1,000 times.
Right, you can't just skip to the next track on a playlist.
No, you learn the actual anatomy of the song. You understand the frequency spectrum, the subtle shifts in the bass line, the exact millisecond the hi-hat enters. That friction built a cellular understanding of music structure that a simple digital download button simply cannot replicate.
He is building deep neural pathways of dedication because the environment demanded it.
Exactly.
It's the cognitive difference between reading a summary of a book and actually handwriting the entire manuscript yourself. You just metabolize the information differently.
It's a great way to put it.
And for you listening right now, consider your own workflow for a second. Where might your learning or creative process be a little too frictionless? Are you skimming the executive summaries and letting an algorithm feed you solutions? Or are you deliberately introducing friction to force deeper mastery?
It really asks a fundamental question, you know. Are you hunting for the knowledge, or are you just a passive recipient? Because the hunt is where the neuroplasticity occurs.
Wow, that's good. Okay, so Cedric embraces this analog grind. And by the time he's a teenager, his father is actually driving him to a club in Saint-Tropez called Papagayo for a weekend residency.
Which is crazy because he isn't even legally allowed in the venue as a patron.
Right. But this exposure leads to a seismic opportunity, which then immediately morphs into an industry-wide catastrophe.
Yeah, this is the moment the narrative shifts from simple skill acquisition to the psychology of adaptability.
So the owner of the Queen, which was the premier mega club in Paris at the time, hears Cedric play in Saint-Tropez.
Yeah.
He is so impressed he hires the 17-year-old kid to be the resident DJ in Paris.
A huge leap.
Massive. Cedric gets an apartment, relocates, plays his debut show, and feels like he has just conquered his field. And then, abruptly, the French government permanently shuts down every single club and bar in the entire city of Paris due to widespread drug issues.
It's just a total systemic shock. The entire industry he trained for is legislated out of existence in his home country practically overnight.
It is a devastating roadblock. So a friend suggests that while Paris is shut down, Cedric should join him on a vacation to Miami. And we need to strip away the modern perception of Miami for a second. This is the late 90s, early 2000s.
Right. It is not the glittering crypto-billionaire ultra-luxury hub it is today.
Not at all.
It was an entirely different frontier. Gritty, undeveloped, and honestly, highly unpredictable.
Yeah, Cedric's friend lived at the Grand Doubletree in downtown Miami. And according to Cedric's recollection, that was essentially the only major building in the area at the time. The skyline was empty, and downtown was notoriously dangerous.
And on top of this environmental hostility, Cedric does not speak English.
Barely a word. His vocabulary is limited to the word hello. He has never traveled outside of France. Yeah. He barely grasps where the United States is on a map. Yet he lands in this empty, dangerous downtown, looks around, and experiences this visceral intuition that he's supposed to stay.
That level of spatial intuition is fascinating in itself, but what's more important is how he operates within that new, chaotic framework.
Right, because the breakthrough happens through sheer serendipity. His friend gets him a slot playing at a random informal house party thrown by a guy named Daniel Ur.
Okay.
And concurrently, the most exclusive club in Miami is a venue called The Living Room, operated by the Milan brothers. So Cedric plays this house party, and his set is so magnetic, so perfectly calibrated, that nobody leaves.
They just stay at the house.
Exactly. The entire nightlife crowd of Miami stays in this living room. He inadvertently starves the biggest venue in the city of its patrons.
That's amazing. Let's dissect the anatomy of that opportunity for a second. Notice what Cedric avoided doing when the Parisian club scene collapsed.
He didn't panic.
He didn't succumb to the sunk cost fallacy. He didn't return to the basement to wait for the government to change its mind. He remained incredibly fluid.
He treated an informal house party with the exact same gravity and intensity that he brought to the mega club in Paris.
And that is the core insight right there. He didn't dial down his effort because the venue lacked prestige. He optimized for the environment he was in rather than the environment he wished he was in.
He played to win.
Exactly. And because he respected the micro opportunity, it evolved into a macro opportunity.
And the consequence of that night is honestly cinematic. The owner of the living room, Francis, is staring at an empty dance floor. He demands his promoter track down the person responsible, and bring them in.
I love this visual.
The image of this enraged Miami nightlife boss dragging a 19-year-old French kid who can't even speak the language into his empty club and hiring him on the spot for a 7-day-a-week residency is just incredible.
It demonstrates the ultimate power of undeniable value. When your output creates measurable, disruptive results in the market, like literally emptying a competitor's venue, demographic barriers like age or language completely evaporate.
The market only responds to leverage.
Exactly. The market doesn't care if you speak English if you can keep a room dancing.
However, securing that residency is merely the entry fee. Maintaining a crowd in a massive club 7 nights a week requires a highly evolved, real-time psychological skill set, which brings us to the actual mechanics of his craft. Cedric graduates from the living room to Crowbar and eventually secures the legendary residency at Club Space.
And the endurance required for the club space residency is just difficult to comprehend from a physiological standpoint.
The schedule they outline in the source material is staggering. Cedric would play inside the main room from midnight until 5:00 a.m. Then, as the sun rose, he would transition to the outdoor terrace and continue playing from 6:00 a.m. until 3:00 or 4:00 in the afternoon.
That is a 15-hour continuous performance.
Explain the cognitive demand of that to me, because people weren't showing up to see Cedric the celebrity, right? They were showing up to the venue. If the energy dipped, the owner, Louis Puig, would replace him instantly. It was essentially a high-stakes employee tasked with continuous crowd control.
Well, the cognitive demand is rooted in extreme, sustained situational awareness. In the interview, they discuss what delineates a competent DJ from an elite one, and it centers entirely on the concept of the transition.
The transition.
Yes. Gary Brecka references former nightclub owner Roman Zago, who noted that a crowd must never perceive an abrupt stop or start.
Right. If you break the momentum, you break the psychological spell of the room.
Exactly. Cedric views the 15-hour set as narrative architecture. You are taking thousands of strangers on a continuous emotional journey.
Wow. Narrative architecture. I like that.
It is. You start with a slow build, you acclimate the room as people enter, you steadily increase the tempo to a peak, you strategically drop the energy to allow for physical recovery, and then you rebuild it. It is continuous, real-time psychological calibration.
And he draws a very sharp contrast between this method and the modern era of the producer-DJ. He really critiques artists who achieve a viral hit song, get booked for massive festivals, but possess zero ability to actually read a room.
Yeah, they arrive for a strict 1-hour set, press play on a pre-recorded track list that stays at maximum energy the entire time, and cater entirely to the audience recording them on cell phones.
Right, they're optimizing for a 60-second social media clip, whereas Cedric was optimizing for a 15-hour physiological experience.
That's a perfect way to put it.
It reminds me of the difference between watching someone deliver a heavily memorized, a rigid PowerPoint presentation versus watching a brilliant reactive stand-up comedian.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
If the audience looks confused or bored, the PowerPoint presenter panics and just clicks to the next slide because they have no flexibility. But the comedian feels the microscopic dip in the room's energy and instantly pivots to crowd work to win them back.
Yes.
Cedric never plays the same songs in the same order. He walks into the booth, gauges the collective energy, evaluates how intoxicated the crowd is, and builds the architecture of the set live, second by second.
That degree of responsiveness is the hallmark of true mastery. But there is a secondary, incredibly powerful advantage to this workflow that relates directly to product development.
Okay, tell me about that.
Well, Cedric notes that DJs who produce their own tracks possess an almost unfair advantage over traditional studio-bound musicians.
Oh, because of the rapid prototyping feedback loop.
Yes. Consider a traditional rock band. They write and record a song in an isolated studio. They might not receive actual market feedback until the album drops 8 months later. The feedback loop is agonizingly slow.
Yeah, they're guessing what people will like.
Right. Cedric, however, can spend a Tuesday tweaking a synthesizer melody or adjusting a bass line in his studio, and then on Saturday night, he drops that unfinished, unreleased track into his set in front of 3,000 people.
He receives instantaneous, visceral data.
Exactly. He watches their biomechanics. Do they keep dancing? Does the collective energy wane right before the drop? The data is undeniable and immediate.
It's amazing.
So he then returns to the studio on Monday, corrects the exact structural flaw he identified on the dance floor, and tests the iterated version the following weekend. It is the ultimate agile development cycle.
It's basically failing in micro increments to build a bulletproof final product.
Exactly.
And I really want to point this directly at your own life and workflow for the listener. Most of us aren't playing 15-hour sets in Miami, but how do you test your own ideas, your pitches, or your products? Are you building in a vacuum, locked in your own theoretical studio, hoping the world likes your PowerPoint presentation when you finally unveil it?
It's a risky game to play.
Right. Or are you actively finding ways to get that real-time Saturday night dance floor feedback from your peers or your market so you can iterate on Monday?
Because you really cannot optimize a product in isolation. You have to expose it to the friction of reality.
Yeah. So Cedric's transition into producing his own music remains true to his analog, high-friction roots. He completes his very first track titled Burning. And instead of emailing an MP3, he burns it onto a physical CD, writes his phone number on it with a permanent marker, and physically hands it to a visiting international DJ named David Waxman while Waxman is playing a crowbar.
It's an incredibly direct, high-risk approach to networking.
Absolutely.
Huh.
But Waxman calls him the following afternoon and signs him to an album deal on Ultra Records based entirely on that one burned CD.
Wow.
Suddenly, the kid from the grandmother's basement is signed to a major booking agency, touring globally and opening for Deep Dish, who at the time were the biggest electronic act on the planet. He's flying on private jets and playing for crowds of 15,000 in Romania.
The acceleration is just dizzying. But as his mentors in Deep Dish advised him, gaining access to the room is insufficient. You have to independently validate your presence there.
Right. Which brings us back to the Las Vegas hook we started with, and an absolute masterclass in bypassing institutional gatekeepers. Cedric creates a bootleg remix of Lana Del Rey's Summertime Sadness.
An iconic track.
He finishes the mix while traveling to play EDC Orlando, tests it in his set, and the crowd reaction is nuclear. They are singing every syllable.
So the organic market validation was instantaneous?
Totally. It goes viral online. It hits #1 on Beatport, which is the primary marketplace where other DJs purchase tracks. Regional radio stations begin playing it without prompting. By every metric, it is an undeniable surging cultural hit.
And yet he collides with a massive wall of institutional bureaucracy.
Yes. Lana Del Rey is signed to Interscope Records. Cedric's management approaches Interscope presenting all this data and demands they push the remix to global top 40 radio, and Interscope refuses.
Unbelievable.
Their rationale is that Lana's album cycle has concluded. The marketing spreadsheet for that quarter is closed. They have no interest in an unauthorized remix.
This is a textbook example of institutional inertia. Large corporations operate on rigid schedules, quarterly projections, and predetermined marketing cycles.
Right, the spreadsheet is God.
Exactly. When a cultural phenomenon emerges organically, completely off schedule, the institution often lacks the agility to process it. It disrupts their internal order, so they ignore it.
Because it didn't set the spreadsheet, they literally pretended the cultural momentum didn't exist. Cedric, however, refuses to accept the bureaucracy. He understands a fundamental truth. You cannot win an argument against an executive in a boardroom using theoretical data.
So he bypasses the argument entirely and weaponizes the consumer.
Yes, he fundamentally alters the environment of the negotiation. John Eman was an A&R executive at Interscope at the time. Cedric is booked to play the main stage at EDC Las Vegas. He personally flies Eman from Los Angeles to Las Vegas and strategically places him in the DJ booth, looking out over the crowd.
This is such a bold move.
Cedric plays the set, transitions into Summertime Sadness, and right as the massive chorus hits, he completely cuts the audio. Total silence from the speakers. What Eamon hears is 90,000 people roaring the lyrics back at the stage in unison.
It is a staggering sensory reality to be confronted with. The executive is no longer looking at a spreadsheet. He is engulfed by the market demand.
Eamon looks at the 90,000 people, looks at Cedric, immediately returns to LA, and calls Cedric's manager, his mandate. Next week, this song will be top 40 radio worldwide.
He couldn't deny the visceral reality he had just witnessed.
Not at all.
It's a brilliant strategy for presenting proof of concept. If you are facing institutional resistance, don't waste energy arguing over projections. Build the prototype, generate the reaction, and then forcefully place the decision makers in an environment where they have to witness the undeniable reality of the crowd.
Make it more painful for them to ignore you than to support you. And the result is unprecedented. The song sells 8.5 million singles. It hits #1 globally. And it culminates in Cedric standing on the stage at the Grammy Awards.
Wow.
He defeats towering industry names, One Direction, Bruno Mars, the Bob Marley legacy to win the Grammys. His acceptance speech is wonderfully unpolished because the Grammys are highly secretive. He had no idea he was going to win.
Right. He hadn't prepared a PR statement.
He recalls a speech LeBron James gave stating, "I'm just a kid from Akron." Cedric steps to the microphone and says, "I just wanted my DJ friends to play this record. I'm just a kid from Marseille with a dream. I'm not even supposed to be here."
It is the absolute pinnacle of external validation. The highest conceivable award in his field, achieved through an organic, passion-driven project that he had to fight the corporate system to release.
You would naturally assume this is the moment the friction disappears and the easy coasting begins. The rocket is in orbit, right?
You'd think so.
But ironically, following this monumental Grammy win, Cedric enters what he describes as a harrowing 2-year creative dark period. He completely loses his compass.
We are entering the territory of the success trap here. And from a psychological standpoint, succeeding at a massive scale is often more dangerous to an artist's career than the initial struggle to break in.
He admits he became entirely consumed with trying to replicate the commercial dominance of Summertime Sadness. He had secured massive record deals, and he felt a crushing, suffocating pressure to deliver for these labels.
The expectations change.
He shifted from operating out of creative passion to operating out of strategic obligation. He was literally spending days in the studio creating music he personally despised simply because he hypothesized it sounded like a guaranteed hit, and none of it gained traction.
I think we need to look at the neuroscience of motivation here to really understand why he failed. We're talking about the collision between intrinsic and extrinsic reward systems.
Let's unpack that. How does external validation actually kill creativity?
It's a well-documented psychological phenomenon known as the over-justification effect.
Okay.
When Cedric created the initial remix, his motivation was entirely intrinsic. He stated he merely wanted his peers to play it in their sets. The reward was the joy of creation and community connection.
Right.
The brain releases dopamine during the process of intrinsic play, but post-Grammy, his motivation shifted entirely to the extrinsic. He was chasing chart metrics, label approval, and financial milestones.
He started optimizing for the reward rather than the process.
Exactly. When you introduce massive external rewards, the brain's reward circuitry actually rewires itself. It begins to view the creative act not as play, but as stressful labor required to secure the external reward.
Oh, wow. So the joy is just gone.
The dopamine hit is delayed until the song hits #1. If you try to reverse engineer a magical, spontaneous moment, you strip away the authentic, relaxed exploration that allowed the magic to occur in the first place.
And the audience can feel that.
Yes. The audience, whether it's music fans, clients, or consumers, they possess a highly sensitive radar for inauthenticity. When you create out of desperation for a hit, the audience senses the calculation and they reject it.
So how does he escape this neurological trap? His manager finally intervenes and delivers profound advice. He says, "Stop trying to manufacture a hit. Go back to making music for your friends to play in their sets. Return to the root behavior."
He needed to reset the motivation.
Right. So Cedric listens. He takes a classic track by the SOS Band called "Do It Tonight." He remixes it purely for fun, strictly for his immediate community.
The intrinsic motivation is restored.
And the market responds instantly. The track explodes. It becomes the official touchdown anthem for Monday Night Football. It lands on major movie soundtracks, and it goes global.
That's incredible.
The antidote to the success trap was returning to the joy of the craft.
And this philosophy is echoed in a fascinating observation he shares regarding his close friend, David Guetta.
I found this detail so revealing. David Guetta is arguably one of the most commercially successful electronic artists in history. He possesses unimaginable wealth and an endless catalog of hits.
He's a legend.
Yet, Cedric observes Guetta working in the studio and admits he feels embarrassed by his own work ethic in comparison. Because despite having conquered the world, Guetta still grinds with the desperate, ferocious hunger of a kid who has absolutely nothing.
See, Guetta has mastered the art of manufacturing scarcity.
What do you mean by that?
If you rely on external circumstances, like an empty bank account, or a lack of recognition to keep you hungry, you will inevitably lose your edge the moment you achieve comfort.
Because the external pressure is gone.
Right. You have to psychologically internalize the scarcity. You have to build a framework where the internal standard is always higher than the external validation.
When Cedric stops forcing the commercial hits, his energy relaxes, and it paradoxically opens up entirely unexpected lateral avenues of success. He embarks on what we can only describe as wild Hollywood side quests.
Which is such a fun pivot in the story.
Through his close friend, the Miami hospitality magnate Dave Grutman, Cedric begins interacting with massive film directors.
It illustrates the value of being open to lateral opportunities when you remove the suffocating pressure of a singular goal.
Exactly. Grutman introduces Cedric to directors Michael Bay and Peter Berg. They initially licensed Cedric's music for the film Pain and Gain, and then Michael Bay impulsively casts Cedric in a minor acting role.
Just like that.
Just like that. The momentum builds organically. Soon he's traveling to Colombia with Peter Berg to shoot Mile 22. He secures a role in Deepwater Horizon, acting alongside Kurt Russell and Mark Wahlberg. He appears in Patriot Day.
That's a serious resume.
And he isn't aggressively campaigning to become a full-time Hollywood actor. He is simply enjoying the creative ride because he abandoned the rigid strategy. As Gary Brecka quotes in the interview, "Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans."
However, the irony of surviving the psychological success trap is that mental resilience means very little if the physical body is actively deteriorating.
Yeah, that's the dark side of all this.
Which brings us to the final and arguably most critical evolution of Cedric's career.
The physiological toll. Let's dive into the Gary Brecka protocol and the concept of the ultimate human. Because when you envision the lifestyle of a globally touring DJ, you envision a biomechanical nightmare.
Absolutely.
It is an industry built on extreme alcohol consumption, narcotics, profound sleep deprivation, constant time zone traversal, and living in a perpetual state of low-grade illness.
From a biological perspective, that specific environment is uniquely calibrated to accelerate cellular aging. The chronic disruption of the circadian rhythm alone is catastrophic for the immune system and cognitive longevity.
Cedric realized that if he wanted to sustain his elite status into his 40s and 50s, he had to completely reject the industry stereotype. He declared his intention to become, in his words, superhuman.
I love that goal.
He partners with Gary Brecka, and they initiate a massive diagnostic overhaul. They extract 74 different biomarkers from his blood and conduct deep genetic testing.
And despite Cedric avoiding narcotics and excessive alcohol, the sheer cumulative stress of the travel and sleep deprivation had taken a significant toll. The blood work revealed elevated hemoglobin A1C and high fasting insulin.
And I need you to translate those specific markers for me. What is actually happening at a cellular level when someone has high A1C and insulin resistance? Why is that so dangerous?
Okay, so hemoglobin A1C is essentially a 3-month historical average of your blood sugar levels.
Like a snapshot of the last 90 days.
Exactly. When you consume excess carbohydrates or experience chronic stress, which, by the way, elevates cortisol and dumps glucose into the bloodstream, that sugar actually binds to your red blood cells.
It binds to them.
Yes, that process is called glycation. A high A1C means you have a high percentage of sugar-coated red blood cells circulating, causing systemic damage to blood vessels.
And the insulin resistance, how does that fit in?
Think of insulin as a key that unlocks your cells to let the glucose in for energy.
Okay, I'm with you.
When you are chronically stressed, sleep-deprived, and eating poorly, your body pumps out so much insulin that the cellular locks become damaged. The key no longer works.
So the glucose is just stuck outside.
The glucose stays trapped in your bloodstream, leading to metabolic dysfunction, chronic fatigue, and accelerated aging. Cedric was on the precipice of a metabolic crash.
Wow. So they implement an incredibly strict, proactive protocol. Let's break down the pillars of this biohacking regimen, because they are extreme, but they clearly yield undeniable results.
Right.
Pillar number 1. Sleep becomes an absolute non-negotiable boundary. Cedric completely restructures his global touring logistics around a guaranteed 8 hours of sleep per night. He categorically refuses to board early morning flights.
That's a huge shift for a touring artist.
If he performs a show, he sleeps his 8 hours, regardless of the inconvenience. He forces the travel schedule to accommodate the sleep, not the other way around.
Setting a boundary like that in an industry that demands perpetual availability requires immense leverage, but it is biologically essential.
Because it's not just resting your eyes.
No, sleep is not merely rest. It is an active state of neurological repair and immune system recalibration. Without that foundation, no amount of supplements or diet hacks will prevent cellular breakdown.
Pillar number 2, intermittent fasting. Due to the insulin resistance, Brecka prescribes a rigid fasting window. Cedric admits the initial adaptation was brutal, but it is now permanently hardwired into his routine.
It's highly effective for his condition.
He restricts his entire caloric intake to a strict 5-hour window from 3:00 p.m. to 8:00 p.m. And he maintains this discipline even while navigating transcontinental flights. He consumes only water and black coffee while airborne.
The mechanism behind intermittent fasting is fascinating. It triggers a cellular process called autophagy.
Give me a way to visualize autophagy. How does fasting actually heal the insulin resistance?
Imagine your digestive system and cellular network as a massive office building.
Okay, an office building.
If the loading dock doors are opened 104/7 and delivery trucks are constantly bringing in new boxes of food, the workers inside are frantically trying to process the new inventory.
Right, they're just sorting boxes all day.
They never have a moment to take out the trash, fix the broken lights, or repair the damaged locks on the doors. Fasting shuts the loading dock doors for 19 hours a day.
It stops the incoming freight.
Exactly. It forces the body to stop processing new calories and allows the internal janitorial staff to emerge. They clear out the cellular debris, repair the insulin receptors, and consume damaged cells for energy. That is autophagy.
So he is literally giving his metabolic machinery the required downtime to repair itself.
Yes.
Pillar number 3, extreme environmental and dietary standards. During his 5-hour eating window, he exclusively consumes organic, non-GMO foods. Brecka highlights a deeply unsettling detail in the interview regarding conventional agriculture.
Oh, this part is wild.
He explains that if you take a regular non-organic piece of fruit and wash it in the sink, you are essentially creating a pesticide soup.
Right. The water simply reactivates and spreads the chemical residue over the surface of the fruit. The toxic load from modern industrialized agriculture is immense.
It's terrifying to think about.
And when your liver and immune system are already burdened by the stress of international travel and sleep disruption, minimizing that external toxic load becomes paramount for maintaining high energy output.
Cedric attacks this toxic load aggressively. He mandates that his tour managers source organic provisions from markets like Whole Foods immediately upon landing in a new city. He insists on drinking Mountain Valley water exclusively because it is bottled in glass, completely avoiding the endocrine-disrupting microplastics found in standard plastic bottles.
That's a great detail.
And this is perhaps my favorite granular detail. Cedric physically travels with his own high-quality, non-GMO sea salt in his pockets to season his food at restaurants.
To the average person, carrying your own salt sounds deeply eccentric. But in the context of high performance, it is a brilliant manifestation of a concept we call controlling the controllables.
Let's lean into that, because I think the natural reaction for a listener hearing this protocol is to immediately formulate excuses. I travel too much for corporate sales, or I have 3 kids, or my schedule is too unpredictable to maintain that level of rigidity.
Right. The friction of the environment is the most common excuse for physiological neglect. But look at Cedric's reality.
It's insane.
He is operating in a different country, a different continent, and a different time zone almost every single day. His environment is the absolute definition of chaos. Yet he maintains rigid, impenetrable boundaries around his biology regardless of his geography.
He doesn't allow the environment to dictate his health. He forces the environment to bend to his biological rules. Which brings us to a specific hack he utilizes in restaurants.
I love this one.
We all know that dining out is a nutritional minefield because of hidden ingredients. Cedric's approach is highly confrontational but effective. When he dines at a restaurant, even an elite Michelin-starred establishment, he assumes they are cooking with cheap, inflammatory seed oils like sunflower or canola oil.
Which they almost certainly are.
So he explicitly and loudly demands that the chef prepare his steak exclusively in butter. He prioritizes his biological engine over the social friction of being a difficult customer.
I want to explain why he is so aggressive about avoiding seed oils. Because it's not just a dietary fad, seed oils are highly processed and contain massive amounts of linoleic acid.
And why is linoleic acid bad?
When these oils are heated in a commercial kitchen, the linoleic acid oxidizes rapidly. When you consume those oxidized fats, they become incorporated into your cellular membranes, triggering chronic systemic inflammation across the entire body.
It's literally inflaming you on a cellular level.
Exactly. Transitioning away from unstable seed oils to stable, natural animal fats like butter is a major lever in drastically reducing that inflammatory burden.
The compounding effect of these relentless daily disciplines is undeniable. The source material confirms his complete blood count, and immune markers have completely normalized. He states on the record that he simply does not contract illnesses anymore.
That's the ultimate ROI.
His cognitive focus is sharper, his stamina for those marathon DJ sets is vastly improved, And at age 44, he claims he operates with vitality of a 20-year-old. He meticulously rebuilt the physical vessel to ensure he could sustain the art.
It is the ultimate holistic integration of career and biology. The mind and the body are not isolated systems. They are a continuous feedback loop.
Let's synthesize this incredible trajectory. We observed a 15-year-old kid in Marseille who harnessed the immense friction of the analog era to forge a deep neurological mastery of his craft.
Right.
We saw him adapt to industry collapse by taking a terrifying leap into the chaotic unknown of Miami, treating a random house party with the intensity of a Super Bowl to pry open a door of opportunity.
We analyzed his thousands of hours mastering the psychological architecture of the transition, controlling the emotional state of crowds over punishing 15-hour sets, and utilizing the rapid prototyping feedback loop to perfect his product.
He weaponized the consumer and utilized undeniable market data to bypass institutional gatekeepers, forcing a massive hit into the mainstream.
He survived the neurological poison of external expectations, escaping the success trap by returning to the intrinsic joy of making music for his immediate community.
And finally, recognizing the inevitable toll of his ambition, he completely biohacked and rebuilt his metabolic engine, establishing ironclad boundaries to ensure he can perform at an elite level for decades.
It is a profound study in resilience, adaptation, and biological optimization.
But the final piece of the puzzle, the psychological anchor that holds this entire structure together, is a mantra Cedric repeats to his managers to this very day.
Which is?
Despite the Grammys on his shelf, the millions of records sold, the Hollywood film appearances, and the global recognition, he operates daily under the core belief: I haven't made it yet. He chooses to remain hungry.
Which leaves us with a critical provocation for you to consider today. Look at the professional or creative space you operate in right now. Have you accidentally become the pre-recorded DJ of your own career?
Oh, that's a tough question to ask yourself.
Are you relying on a rigid, memorized PowerPoint presentation of your past successes? Are you coasting on a frictionless environment, entirely forgetting how to read the shifting energy of the room? What specific, desirable friction can you reintroduce into your workflow today to wake yourself back up?
It is a vital question. You must manufacture your own discomfort before the market manufactures it for you. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep hunting for the knowledge, keep tweaking the baseline, and we'll see you next time.